friends. I'm so glad you're joining us today. We sure do miss seeing you at the library. All of the librarians are very eager to come back to work and see you. We miss you a lot, so hopefully we can all be together again soon. But in the meantime, I thought I would read to you one of my favorite stories. My name is Emily, and I'm one of the librarians at the Lawrence Public Library. And I'm here with my friend Virginia Wolf. And Virginia and I wanted to read you a story today. Virginia is practicing some safety, and so she's got her mask on, which makes it a little tough for her to read. So I thought I would read the story and she can just listen. Does that sound good? This is one of my most favorite books, and I hope that you like it too. It's called Extra Yarn, and the author is Mac Barnett. That means that he wrote the words to the book. And the illustrator is John Klassen. That means that he drew all the pictures for the book. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too. But there was still extra yarn. Mars is her dog. See his little sweater there? And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. There he is, and he's got a dog too. But it turned out he was. She knit a sweater for him and for his dog too. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could, and she did. They've all got sweaters. Even for Mr. Norman, she knitted him one too. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louis. There he is. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats and for other animals too. Soon, people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. I love this. She made a sweater for the birdhouse, and the little bird has a sweater too. And the mailbox. Things began to change in that little town. She made sweaters for all the buildings. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn. And people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. There he is. "Little girl," said the Archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The Archduke's mustache twitched. $2,000,000, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10,000,000, shouted the Archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house. And they stole the box and took it to the Archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea. Back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. His mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But it's in the middle of the sea. And it floated all the way back to her. It turned out she was. The end. I love that book. I love that book so much. And if I could knit, and if I had a box of yarn, I would knit you a sweater. Would you knit a sweater? Oh, thank you. And if I was going to knit a sweater for something, not just someone, I would probably knit a sweater for my plants. I have a lot of plants in my house and I love them very much. And I think I would knit a sweater for my plants. What's that? Sorry, it's hard to hear you because your mask. Oh, that's a good idea too. Virginia says that she would knit sweaters for her crayons. Virginia loves to draw and to write, and so she would knit sweaters for all of her little crayons to keep them warm. Who would you knit a sweater for? Or what would you knit a sweater for if you had a box of yarn and could knit sweaters for something? Who would you knit for, or what would you knit for? Thank you so much for letting us read to you today. Virginia and I are so happy that we got to read you a story today, and we hope that you're staying well and safe, and we can't wait to see you back at the library again very soon. Until then, bye-bye.